Hey, what's up, everybody? This is an open discussion with C3 Films. My name is Chris, and this is.
Cheryl.
And today we're going to be talking about the Guillermo del Toro Pinocchio animated film that came out on Netflix a little while back. So, it has been out for a little while. We are just talking about it today. But if you haven't seen it, go check it out on Netflix because we are going to be going into spoiler territory. Then, after you're done, come back and see what we had to say about it right here on this channel.
Is it
So,
not on Disney Plus, not Netflix?
you're talking about Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio? That's
Yeah.
Netflix.
That's Netflix?
That that's Netflix. Disney Plus is the other Pinocchio that we're going to be talking about later. They're
Oh.
not both on Disney Plus.
I thought they were both Disney properties.
No, that's the whole reason. That's the whole reason we're able to talk about it. They went into the public domain. That's why everyone started making Pinocchio movies.
Okay. That explains.
Just like Winnie the Pooh went into public domain, and you're getting horror movies with Winnie the Pooh.
I really want to watch that, by the way. But, anyways, off
Yes.
topic.
So yes, but anyway, we are going to go ahead and let's just jump right into this. We all know about Guillermo del Toro. We all have seen a lot of his films. Great director, great filmmaker, and the commonality in all of his films that I like to joke is, except I guess maybe the Hellboy films, is that in every single one of his movies, a child has to die. And it's not 100% the case, but like in 90% of his movies, a child dies. So imagine my not surprise when this movie started and we see that Geppetto's son has died. And then we actually go and see what led to that death. And that's where I was just like, oh yeah, this is definitely a very different movie because we are not going to shy away from the fact that, yeah, people die. And I think this is one thing that both the Pinocchio movies did, where the original animated one, Disney's, didn't really talk about Geppetto having a kid or anything else like that. That he lost. He was just like he just made a puppet and he wanted it to be a real boy and it came to life. But there was no real mention of why he wanted that outside of him just wanting it. But both of these movies address the fact that he wanted to have a real boy to basically help him deal with the loss of his son. So that's like one commonality of theme that is prevalent about with both these films. But yeah, like that was very surprising. That wasn't surprising, but it was still what was surprising was how the kid died, because like in a bomb strike, and that's another thing that's prevalent in like many of Del Toro's films is like violence because of war. And this movie is going to have that as a big motivating factor for a lot of the things that are happening because it's happening during a time of war is when this story is taking place. But yeah, but that's just jumping in. And I think that's like the first 15, 20 minutes. But anyway, like kick it to you. Like what were you kind of thinking when you jumped into the film?
Well, I mean, just to, go off of what you were saying about how Del Toro, like, more common than not, has a child's eye in his movies. I'd actually seen a handful of stuff by Del Toro, and only one of them, besides Pinocchio, had a child's eye in it. So I was really surprised because the one I'm talking about is, of course, spoilers, Pan's Labyrinth. That's the one that I saw where I was like, oh, whoa, a child died. And I was surprised. And I actually watched that after I watched Pinocchio. So
Oh,
Pinocchio
you
was,
just saw Pan's Labyrinth recently?
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. I know. I don't want to talk about it, but anyways, so Pinocchio is actually the first Del Toro movie that I seen where a child dies. No, I don't think that a child died in The Shape of Water. And I know we
No.
talked about that one, but I had seen, we even watched the Tales, that Tales movie, the anthology one
Oh,
on
the show.
Netflix. Yeah, and I think we only watched a couple, but I don't remember kids dying in that
Children
one
die. Yeah.
either.
No, they do.
Oh well, I
They
don't.
do.
It wasn't like a main thing though that was like really showcasing
No,
it.
no, no. It wasn't like in every episode or anything. But like even like with the whole thing with the Devil's Backbone, I believe it is one of his like his Spanish language films. usually because that one was about like an orphanage during the war, kind of very reminiscent of Pinocchio actually. And like yeah, kids were dying in that one too. So yeah, it was something that was definitely prevalent in his Spanish language films leading up into Pan's Labyrinth, and then after that, then yeah, that's been kind of off and on since then.
I think I just so happen to not have seen the ones that go along with that theme. But of course, they're
Hmm.
filmmakers are not going to do the same thing every time and everything. So
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it's not a theme that they like to do or like a motif that they like to do. Um, but yeah, I was pretty shocked. I was like, whoa, in Pinocchio, somebody dies,
Hmm.
and um, I mean, it kind of, if you didn't tell me that it was a Del Toro movie, I kind of would have thought that it was Tim Burton because it was kind of Tim Burton-y with like the way the characters are designed, and even like the blue fairy is kind of creepy and the creatures are just kind of weird, and the story is kind of
Hmm.
dark, though I think it's a little darker than what Tim Burton would usually do, because I think Tim Burton's not quite dark like this, but
Yeah.
more macabre like. So there's,
Macabre.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's definitely different. But I would have thought that this was a Tim Burton film if I didn't know that it was Del Toro. So I thought that was interesting. Um, but yeah, I felt weird because I am a big Disney person, so
Hmm.
I thought it was a weird addition. This is very different from the original Disney cartoon. Not really realizing that that's not what he was trying to do, to like remake the original
Yeah.
Disney movie, and so I had to really let go of that very early on. But you're right. In the original Disney movie, he Geppetto doesn't have a son that is mentioned. And the way I always thought of it is that he's like a single guy, and he's like a single old guy, and he wants
Hmm.
a boy, and so that's why he wanted Pinocchio to be like, he wished for Pinocchio to be a real boy, because that's just something that he always dreamed of having. And um, that Disney movie is all about wishes and dreaming and stuff like that. So it's that kind of difference where this is, he didn't even wish for Pinocchio to be real. It just kind of happens to him. And he turns out to be this annoying kiddo, and I'm like, oh my
Yes,
god.
he's much more annoying in this movie than he is in like
Literally any of
the
the other Pinocchios in existence.
yeah, to the point where like I remember thinking to myself, this kid is bad. Like, oh my gosh, I hate this kid. This kid is terrible. He's like actually causing trouble. So yeah, and it's funny because you're so used to him being kind of more sweet and endearing and curious, and I think he's still curious, but he's curious to his curiosity is like played differently. It's like played as more of like causing trouble through curiosity versus just kind of like getting, I guess, himself into trouble that then he has to like get out of. So like, and his curiosity is actually causing trouble for others as well.
Yeah. And I guess like the other differences is he never turns into a donkey, so I was kind of waiting for that whole thing with the carnival to happen, but it doesn't happen. There's no Figaro, there's no Cleo. And I was like, those are really big parts of the cartoon, is having freaking Cleo and Figaro, because he brings them to look for
Hmm.
Pinocchio, and somehow they all end up inside Monstro, um,
Right.
somehow. But like, I was really missing all of that, so I feel like I was really watching something completely different. Um, the I mean, the main thing there is with Geppetto having Pinocchio and boy, that a puppet that, oh my gosh, the way he makes the puppet, because he's like,
Hmm.
he made it was like a drunken creation.
Yeah.
And then he like tries to kill him at the very beginning. And then there's the whole thing about him like coming back to life and stuff, but he does go kind of go to the traveling carnival with what's his name? Strom
I
Stromboni.
oh yeah, I think so.
Something like that. But then he ends up going to war, and that's like the crazy part is, and the crazy different part. So, um, yeah, there are a few elements of similarity to what I'm familiar with, but otherwise, this was a completely different
Yeah,
movie.
it starts to diverge pretty quickly. I mean, certain things are still there, like you still have, Jiminy Cricket, and you still have, although I don't think we actually hear the name Jiminy in this one. And and he's made of pine, which was a trait I didn't remember. I didn't remember that Pinocchio was made from pine. I was like, oh, did they like add that? And then obviously rewatching, including rewatching at least the opening of the original Disney animated one. Um, yeah, that's like a common thing is that it's a little boy made of pine. So I liked the idea that Jiminy Cricket had like a home inside of Pinocchio, and that way like he's like kind of in Pinocchio's heart and is like able to travel with him, and is still trying to do his best. There's a lot of elements in there that also just kind of intrigued me. Like you were talking about like the whole death thing. When Pinocchio gets hit, I think he gets hit by like a wagon or something, and that's like his first death. And I liked when he goes and he's in like the underworld or whatever, and then he's talking to the fairy, and the fairy tells him it's just like, hey, she like lays out these rules, and it's like every time you die, you have to spend more time here until the sand drops out of the hourglass. And I was like, oh wow, this is very interesting. I like this concept because it probably means he's gonna die more and more, and it's like, and the time increases every time he comes here. So that's obviously going to be something that's going to come into play like later in the movie. But I kind of like this as an idea, and it's intriguing because it means that Pinocchio is essentially immortal. Um, and then they play around with that more and more in the films, and obviously, so he gets like at first he gets tricked into joining the traveling circus, but then Geppetto actually finds him, which I was surprised by. Um, but then Pinocchio leaves on his own because one, him and Geppetto get into a fight, but also because he wants to be able to support Geppetto with the money that he would make from traveling in the traveling circus. And one of the people that they want to travel to perform in front of is, I believe, Mussolini. Um, and we get to there, and at that point when Pinocchio realizes that the money he's been making hasn't been going back to Geppetto, he decides to like basically rig the performance where it basically makes fun of him, and then he ends up getting shot. And I love how they did that, where they show the guy pull out a gun and shoot off screen, and then we cut to Pinocchio emerging out of the casket, and it's like, okay, that we just saw this kid die, but we didn't actually see him die, but we just saw this kid die, and it was actually played for laughs. So I liked moments like that. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I know someone mentioned that Pinocchio was based on an Italian children's story, which makes sense because that's obviously where Walt Disney gets a lot of his stories from.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess like the most of us don't know the original stories, and I think probably most people who are watching this are going off of what Disney originally created,
Right.
like myself. But I would agree with you about really liking this new concept of Pinocchio not being able to die necessarily. And I really like how they explored it, and like how when like it comes into play at the end for the crossroads where Pinocchio has to make a decision to kind of use his last life essentially.
Right.
Like he can never come back to like be reborn again. Um And I like how like we always know like when we're introduced we know that this is an option for him, but we can't really fathom a reason why he would want to use it. And then of course it's at the very end, and that's when it kind of circles back and you know goes back along the lines, the storyline of the Walt Disney version of it, where he tries to save Geppetto.
Right.
And I'm glad that they kept that because I think that that was a really special moment. Also, the moment where he turns into a real boy.
Yeah,
um,
but in this one, he doesn't turn into a real boy, which is interesting. It actually doesn't go that way,
yeah.
which is a big change from what we're familiar with.
Mm-hmm. Remind me what happens again.
No, so like so the end of the movie is actually kind of bittersweet because like so Geppetto does get saved, Pinocchio actually does die, and then and then Jiminy Cricket is like says to the fairy, "You said that I could have anything that I wanted if I was to be this person's conscience, if I was to be Pinocchio's conscience, and I did my best." And so he says, "I wish that you'd bring the boy back." And so then they bring Pinocchio back to life, but he's still like, he's still a wooden puppet, but it's almost kind of like everything is reset. So now he's immortal again. And then they go back home and you think that's where the movie would end, but no, the movie has to gut punch you harder. So it goes through the years and then it talks about how Geppetto gets old and then Geppetto dies and then one day he comes and he finds Jiminy Cricket dead on like the windowsill and then when he's walking to the grave of Spinoza or oh my god the monkey, I forgot the monkey's name now, um but the monkey is old and then as they're walking to the grave the monkey also dies and Pinocchio's still the same and then he just goes off and they're like, hey, did he ever become a real boy? And it's just like, well, dang, man, if you edit the movie like literally like 5 minutes ago, it would have been a happy ending. And now it's just kind of sad because Pinocchio's just gonna outlive everyone. So yeah, it's another really large detour from what we're used to. I still like it. I think it works, but I was just when I was watching the first, I was like, well, dang, I was feeling good.
Yeah, I mean it was definitely thanks for reminding me by the way. But I do remember feeling like it's definitely not for kids, but I guess no, I don't think it's really for kids. But it's a much more dark, I guess like you can really see the twist that, Del Toro puts on this story to really make it his own,
Hmm.
his signature style movie. Um, but I would agree with you. It is like bittersweet. It makes you feel stuff that like maybe you don't want to feel, but it's it's an interesting concept. Like it's hard for me to explain. I know you and I feel the same way about life and death and stuff like that, and it
Hmm.
definitely made me think about the concept of dying and the idea of living forever, and it's hard. Like there was just no. I think that's what made it hard is because there was really never gonna be any win for Pinocchio. Like he no matter what was gonna suffer something. Like he either dies or he lives, and
To see everyone else die.
yeah, exactly. um but yeah. Um I mean, I don't know about I don't think I'm familiar with anyone in the cast except for Ian McGregor. Um
Really? I think they've had a pretty recognizable cast. I want to say, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, now I'm forgetting. Because I looked up the cast and I was like very surprised. Yeah, no, you know a couple of these people because Finn Wolfhard is in the movie. And that's the guy from Stranger Things. It's a kid from Stranger Things that's in
oh,
Ocean's
okay.
11.
Okay.
So, so you have him in the movie. You have Ron
Christopher
Perlman.
Waltz.
Yeah, Christoph Waltz and Kate Blanchett. And Spaccatura. That's the name of the cat, the monkey thing. Yeah, Tilda Swinton. Like this is like a pretty all-star cast.
I didn't write
So
any of this down.
yeah, no, it's all good.
Sorry, I
Um,
feel like it's been quite a while since I watched it, so please forgive me for not remembering this stuff. But I usually write this stuff down. The only one I wrote down was Ian McGregor, but I think it's probably because I really liked it. I really
mhm.
liked him as Sebastian, not Jiminy
Mhm.
Cricket. So you even changed the name.
Oh
Um,
yes.
but I think the part that I really liked that I thought was funny was actually um, the scene when Geppetto makes Pinocchio, because they introduce him as this like master craftsman of like beautiful wood carvings and stuff. And then he
Hmm.
makes this really crappy, ugly, freaky looking puppet that becomes the main character of the movie.
Right.
Which really sucks. Like, I feel so bad for Pinocchio in this movie. Because he really goes, like,
Hmm.
even though he's really annoying at the beginning, like, you still feel bad for him because, like, he didn't ask for any of this. It just kind of happened to him. And it was all because of
Hmm.
Geppetto.
Yeah, basically. He didn't have to have it. Every time he tells a lie, his nose grows. Which, in this movie, I like that when the nose grows, it actually kind of like branches out, because he is essentially a tree. So I really liked how they did that in this movie, and I like how even that came back at the end, where they actually used his ability to lie in order to allow them to escape Monstro.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It almost felt like you made me love you and then you tried to kill me and but I still loved you and I loved you all the way no matter what, and he was treated so poorly and then he was loved and then hated again
Mhm.
and then loved again. It's just I feel bad for the kid.
Yeah, and that brings us like another thing that I thought, which was like a very big detour, which is not in like the Disney version, is the point where they go to in the Disney version they go to the theme park, or like the place where all the children are running away before they all get turned into donkeys.
Pleasure
So that's
Island.
not Pleasure Island. Thank you, and that's not in this movie. Instead, they go to a different island, which is essentially a war
A
training
boot
camp for
camp.
children.
Yeah.
and and that was like, whoa, this is also very different. But I like the fact that the boy that Pinocchio had like a quote unquote rivalry with in the beginning actually
Lampwick.
ended up, yeah, actually ended up being um like a character that they actually ended up being cool with each other. I really like that their relationship went from being antagonistic to being like really cool friends, and like when they were talking and then they're getting angry at each other, but then they just kind of laugh and then they're both happy um that the other person is there, and then you know what's happening, and then they put them on other opposite sides of like the mock battle, and I was like, oh no, this is gonna turn another kid into a dick. But then that kid actually, they get to the top and they both decide that they both win. And so I love the fact that they were really cool until the end. Like any other, I feel like another movie would have just made them turn them into like adversaries. But I like that they were still like they didn't fall for it. Like even when they were kind of falling for it, they just kind of laughed and they decided to still continue being friends. And then the father tried to kill wanted him to kill Pinocchio, and then he refused or whatnot, and then the father dies because it's an air raid and whatnot. It's like whoa, crazy, blown up again. Um, so
I felt
yeah,
a
and then
little
oh my
bit
gosh,
that
you said
felt
what?
I was gonna say that scene felt a little bit like the Naruto and Sasuke fight.
Right. So then yeah, and then the next thing that and then the not Spassatura, what's the guy's name that was like capturing them? I can't remember his name. Podesta, I think maybe. I can't remember. But anyway, the guy that was like that was owning the puppet troupe that was like looking after Pinocchio. He ends up on that island too. So and then right after this kid's father dies, then he dies when Spazzatura and Pinocchio basically take him out because he's about to light Pinocchio on fire, and then Spazzatura saves Pinocchio's life. And then this guy goes over the edge of a mountain and goes splat into a rock, and you're just like, "Yo!" So like you were talking earlier about how this could be a kids movie, it's like it definitely is towing it toes the line. Like in some cases you're like, oh maybe, and the other times you're like, oh actually no, because there's a lot of death in this movie actually.
Yeah, there's a lot of adult concepts. It's kind of like in the guise of, being a children's film. But it really
Mm-hmm.
isn't. But by the way, the I was kind of glad that they had Lampwick in there because at first I was like, oh, I don't remember a character named Lampwick in the movie in the Disney movie, but there is a kid that he befriends called Candlewick. So
Mm.
pretty sure that there's a twist. I wish I knew what the original name was in the story, the folk story, if they even had a friend at Pleasure
Right.
Island.
What is it? Um, oh, okay. You said Candlewick is
So
the person?
Candlewick's in the Disney movie, and Lampwick is in the Del Toro movie.
Are you sure? Oh, okay. I thought it was Candlewick in the Del Toro movie. Okay.
Or is it?
Um,
Oh, no, 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 yeah. Sorry, I'm getting it backwards. It's
okay.
it's yeah. I think
Okay.
it's
The
one.
other way?
Yeah, I think it's the other way.
Hmm.
Candlewick, right?
Yeah, Candlewick
Yeah.
in this
So
movie.
Lampwick is the Disney one. Sorry,
Okay. Gotcha. No, I
they're
mean,
too
that's cool that they
similar.
get. Yeah, it's like very similar. It's like starting to get like crossed.
His name is
Um,
Candlewick in this and the original and the
and
original.
the original. Okay, so
The
there you
the
go.
original folk story. Caboose, did you read the Italian folk story for children? Whoa, so knowledgeable. We should ask him everything. Uh,
Right. But yeah, no, like I at the end of the day for this film, I was surprised because I wasn't really sure how I'd feel about it. I didn't watch it immediately when it came out, but I was curious what Guillermo del Toro would do with it. I actually thought it would be much darker than it was, than ended up being, but it's still pretty dark. It's definitely darker than what most people who are coming from the Disney version would be used to. Um, but I was surprised that there was still a fair amount of art and like happiness and like there were situations that did turn out positively. One thing that we didn't talk about was the oh no, that see now I'm about to like mix things up, but yeah, like there were a lot of differences between this and the original Disney story, but like you were saying, this is more so based off of the Italian story, and Guillermo del Toro was trying to make sure that he could tell that story, and I think that that story, despite being different from what we're used to, was one that I thoroughly enjoyed experiencing, even if it did leave me with a gut punch at the end.
yeah, I feel like one of the big things that I could take away from or like that I would use to differentiate this story versus the Disney story is that this movie was actually more about Geppetto and Geppetto's arc, I think, than Pinocchio, because Pinocchio doesn't really change. He's kind of a innocent boy throughout this whole thing, and he's never really done a right or a wrong thing. He's only tried to please Geppetto, and Geppetto's the one that goes through the change. And I think that
Right.
that's a very different story being told than in the Disney one. And I guess in a sense that is a way, I think, to really say this is not for the children, this is for the adults, because um, the adults are the ones that are, the actual main character of this, as opposed to Pinocchio.
Yeah, and also because just the themes, like you said earlier, like the themes are heavy about thinking about the concept of death,
Mm-hmm.
and like I think that's one of the things they even say in the movie about how we're here for a brief time and then we're gone, and like so the movie is definitely wants you to think about the fact that people die, but Pinocchio will not. So Yeah, but anyway,
Maybe it's
I
something
I
about like the innocence of a child will never die.
maybe that's like that's the underlying message. But either way, I really enjoyed this movie. I had a lot of fun with it, more than I was expecting. But then again, I didn't know what I was expecting because I didn't actually watch a trailer for this film. But I was definitely pleasantly surprised, and I I love experiencing Guillermo del Toro's work. I can't wait to see like what he does next.
All I have left to say is that in not just this Pinocchio, but every freaking single Pinocchio out there, except for I don't know about the foreign one, the foreign
Mm-hmm.
animation, but why doesn't Geppetto bring Pinocchio to school? He's just
Yeah,
like,
why does it? I know it's like you're new to the world. I should walk you to the
yeah,
school, but he doesn't.
in
And you know
all
why?
of them, yeah,
It's because it's
he
so the story can happen.
yeah, he needs to get lost. But oh man, did that, like you would think that at some point they would fix that, but no. Um, I don't even know how Pinocchio knows where to go to school. I'd be like, where is anything actually?
Right? Exactly. So, anyway, but you said that's it. There's nothing else you wanted to like get off your chest before we get out of here.
No, that's it for me.
All right, but that's what we thought about Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio on Netflix. What did you guys think about it? Have you seen it? Did you enjoy it? Did Were the differences between this and the Disney version like as surprising to you as they were for us? Did you read the original novel that this was based off of? Whatever you thought about it, comment below. Let us know. And while you're down there, if you guys would like, share, and subscribe. Even if you don't, though, I have been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, and it's time to go to school.